Apple. Now, I'm old school. I call it Apple Computer. For years, Apple had to call itself Apple Computer because of Apple Music. The Beatles record label was Apple. And so Apple Computer wasn't allowed to do much. Steve Jobs, big Beatles fan, finally settled it with Apple. And Apple Computer became Apple. And Apple is now the wealthiest company on planet Earth thanks to the iPhone, which my producer refuses to use out of spite, even though I make him use a Mac. I am an Apple guy. When I go to New York, I walk around the Cube on Fifth Avenue 7 times praying to Steve Jobs before I enter, as all real members of the cult do. I have literally on my desk right now, I have an iPad Pro, I have my iPhone, I have my Apple Watch, I have 3 Apple monitors, I have a Mac Mini, I got my Apple keyboard, I've got my Apple TV at home, I've got my MacBook Pro and several more monitors. I'm an Apple guy. It just works. It works across platforms from iOS to the Mac. It just works. But Apple spends a lot of money and a lot of time making things in communist China. And today, Apple is actually shaking things up significantly, a huge manufacturing win for Donald Trump. In fact, I find it very notable. Apple is a very progressive company. Tim Cook is an Auburn grad. I won't hold it against him now that my son thinks he wants to go to Auburn. Tim Cook is a progressive. Steve Jobs was progressive, but he was never into throwing Apple's money at progressive causes. Tim Cook has. But Tim Cook is infuriating the left by playing nice with Donald Trump, even writing a large personal check to Trump's inauguration, and now announcing $500 billion and hiring 20,000 people over the next 4 years with an expansion and construction plan coast to coast inside the United States. It's a very big deal. One, it shows that corporate America is finally starting to realize they can't do everything in China. Two, it shows that the mere threat from Donald Trump of tariffs is getting some American companies to domestically rebuild. Three, it's also a big win for red states that are not heavily unionized. There's a trap there, though. We got to be careful. This is the largest ever spending commitment from Apple, according to Apple. Now, Mike Allen was on CNBC this morning talking about this. It's worth listening to. Mike Allen is from Axios. Axios, of course, is a left-wing site, but it got the scoop this morning on the Apple investment in the United States.
This Apple announcement this morning, which just popped 6 a.m. Eastern, all the details are up, the lead story on Axios. This is a landmark story for a couple of reasons. One, the effort by the president to bring manufacturing back to the U.S., this is a massive commitment to that. And as we say in our story, this gives Trump the leverage to say to other companies, Apple can do this. Apple is bringing these jobs into the U.S. Apple is investing in the U.S. Why can't you? Why won't you? And the statement out this morning from Apple CEO Tim Cook, talking about being bullish on the future of America, talking about writing a extraordinary new chapter in the history of American innovation. So that's one bucket. Two, there's an incredible footprint for this. This is all across the United States, and it's part of the big story that Axios has been telling, that it's no longer just the coast. Look at where some of these big investments are. The swing states of Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Nevada, red states, the massive investment that you were talking about in Texas, a big innovation lab in Michigan. So a footprint all across the country. And third, if you look at how the U.S. is going to have a sustained recovery, it's going to be about building things, making things, doing that more in the U.S. This is a big step toward that.
Now, here's the thing. What's the expansion in? It's going to be research and development, silicon engineering, software development, AI and machine learning. Apple plans to greatly expand chip and server manufacturing inside the United States, plus skills development for students and workers around the country. Big investment in technology in the United States from Apple. Now, I want to reread for you, and this is from Axios. Apple plans to greatly expand chip and server manufacturing in the United States. There's an undercurrent here that no one seems to catch, but it's actually a phenomenal undercurrent. And I'm surprised that no one has reported on this. There is a single company on planet Earth that's headquartered in the Netherlands that makes chips at scale that are very, very small. There's a single company. It owns the machine. The machine is a very massive machine. There are, I want to say, like less than a dozen of these machines on planet Earth. If you want to make nano-sized chips that do AI and integrated circuitry, you have to use that machine. And because of the complex nature of the machine and the national security implications of the machine, that machine cannot be located in communist China. But it is located in Taiwan. TSMC in Taiwan has one of these machines. Apple makes a vast array of its chips in Taiwan with this company. If something were to happen to Taiwan, the ability for Apple to make the chips for its computers and its iPhones would disappear. Apple doesn't make the chips in China. Apple's not allowed to make the chips in China because the chips can only be made in this particular device, and this device is not allowed to be imported into China for national security reasons. So Apple moving its chip production, supply chain, and engineering team into the United States is in large part to protect Apple with the coming strife with China. But also it's going to red states. It's not going to blue states, where the cost of labor is cheaper in red states. The deregulatory cost is going to Arizona. It's going to Texas. It's going to Nevada, which is a swing state, not really a red state. But also there is a bit of a red alert here as well for some of these swingy red states. What happens when a bunch of progressives from Apple take up residence in some of these swing states? What do you think is going to do to the politics? Look at Georgia. Where I am here in Georgia, Georgia's fantastic red state, but as major economic centers have come to Georgia, moving employees out of other states to this state, it has demographically changed the state. It's now more of a swing state. So there is kind of a worm in the apple, so to speak, politically there, if you're not very careful. Notwithstanding that, it's a major investment. So in Texas, there will be new advanced AI server manufacturing factory outside of Houston. The 250,000 square foot server manufacturing facility is going to open in 2026 and will create thousands of jobs. Texas is becoming a massive research hub. The other thing here is that with AI, it's going to be power intensive. Notice Apple is avoiding at all costs a lot of states that are heavily reliant on solar and wind. I wouldn't be surprised if we at some point find out they're going to be expanding inside the state of Georgia, where they now have the first nuclear power plant built in the United States in the last several decades. There's also another caution here. How much of this is for show? Now, not a lot of it, I guess, since a lot of this stuff is coming online as early as next year. But if you will recall, Apple committed to a massive investment in the state of North Carolina after Joe Biden got elected. And this is kind of the funny political part here, is a lot of progressives are attacking Apple today. How dare you help Donald Trump? But in 2021, after Joe Biden's election, Apple committed $430 billion in U.S. investments and 20,000 new jobs around the country over 5 years, including in Research Triangle Park of North Carolina, where they paused the development last year. Apple says it's working with Josh Stein, the Democratic governor there, and the North Carolina Department of Commerce to extend the project's timeline, and it continues to hope that it's growing at its corporate office in Raleigh and data center in Catawba, where they have exceeded their planned investment. But concurrent to all of that, very intriguing to me that Apple had launched this sort of stuff after the Biden administration came in and slowed it all down over 4 years. So the question will be how much of this is for show to placate Donald Trump. And the left's attack today is already that this is for show, that this is Apple playing politics. At the same time, their major facility in Texas, $250,000 square foot server manufacturing facility, is going to come online next year and create thousands of jobs. So Texas is going to win big with Apple. You know, Elon Musk has already moved its facility there. Meta is thinking it may reincorporate in the state of Texas. Texas is becoming a new major hub. And part of me does wonder, I got to admit, I got to confess, the political brain of me is wondering, what is this going to do to the socio-political economics of Texas? Is it going to shift the state to the left? Is this why so many people are uprooting from California, running to Texas? They're trying to get a lock on Texas's electoral college votes for the left. I don't know that that's happening. That's the wild, paranoid pundit in me. I don't really know, but it is good economically for Texas. It's good for these other states. It's good for the United States. And really, it's good for Donald Trump as well. One of the ancillary downsides of this, though, is there is a pretty common consensus that tariffs are actually bad. Tariffs economically, they're not actually good. Donald Trump has not imposed tariffs yet. He's threatened tariffs. And the threat of the tariffs has curbed behavior from other nations and also changed the behaviors of American companies. So what Trump is learning is that the threat of tariffs is actually a good thing because the threat of tariffs is changing people's behavior. But what happens when people's behavior doesn't change and Donald Trump continues to go down the tariff road? That could wreck everything economically. You'll have a sugar high for a year or so as tariff revenue comes in, and then a sugar crash when the inflationary costs of tariffs outweigh the benefits of the tax. There are dangers here. We would be wise as a mature people to assess the dangers. But concurrently, you got to say, thus far, Donald Trump has been able to get out of the wealthiest company on planet Earth, something Joe Biden couldn't. A bigger spend, a continued spend on the old commitment, and 20,000 jobs, mostly in red and swing states. Big economic win for these companies. Big economic win for these states. Big economic win for Donald Trump. This is what making America great again looks like.